Welcome everyone to the 20th century.
What a time to be alive. Einstein publishes his theory of relativity, the Nobel Peace Prize is invented, the Cadbury chocolate bar is released, and the Scarlet Pimpernel is taking London by storm. But more exciting than all this is the rise of cinema. As per tradition, I have only seen 11 films from those years, and I will be giving my top 10. So let's get rid of this fucking thing. And let's get started with number 10, which is the Duel of Hamlet. This one goes my number 10 just because, just as the number 11 would be if it was on this list, there's just not really a lot to talk about. It's two men, they're hashing it out with some swords. It's Hamlet, obviously. So you can't see a fucking thing that's going on. It's all fucked up. It's too old. I can't follow a thing that's going on. But, you know, cool, you had a little sword fight, so fair play to you. Number 9, the Story the Biograph told. This is basically the first meta film, I guess. Because it's like, it's a kid, he has a camera, and it's all about the bad things a camera can do. It's just a kid, he's filming things he shouldn't be filming, you know. We have cameras now, should we be filming your dad kissing a woman? That's not really, that's kind of up to you to decide. But the point is, cameras are a new scary invention, so I have respect for this film for being sort of first sort of real self-aware film about herself, you know. It's pretty cool. At number 8 we have Loie Fuller, I think that's how you say it, I don't know. And this is very similar to a film I talked about last time in the 1800s, which was called The Pillar of Fire. This is basically just a slightly modernised version of it. In my opinion, this one does look slightly better. The colour's done just better. It overall just looks a bit nicer. It's basically a second attempt at a really cool effect, and yeah, both times I think they did a good job for what it is, trying to remake The Pillar of Fire essentially. If you look at it like that, I think it does its job well. Number 7 is Joan of Arc, which is another Méliès film. I've mentioned Méliès before, but just to recap, he was sort of a pioneer in the early 20th century.
In the end, I built my own camera using leftover pieces from the automaton. I just had to be a part of this new wonder. We risked everything. We sold the theatre and everything we had, so we could build our own movie studio.
So yeah, we're back on him, and Joan of Arc, this is quite the step up from what we talked about in the 1800s, you know. Joan of Arc actually has a proper story, which is the story of Joan of Arc, obviously. It's hard to follow unless you know the story. I think if you didn't know the story of Joan of Arc, which luckily it's quite famous, but if you don't know it properly, before you watch this, definitely give yourself a recap, because it's not narratively the easiest to follow, and I think that comes down a lot to just a lot of characters on screen that you can't really identify who's who, where you can't see the individual characters so well. You don't know who's who, you just see loads of blobs walking around basically. But at the same time, the sets in this are fucking nuts. They're really, really good. I don't think a single shot is actually in real life, is on location, but they did streets, castles, prisons, all sorts. I especially love when after Joan is burned and she goes up to heaven. God, there's just some really cool, unique, fantastical looking sets. It does look really excellent, and the colour, very well done. A lot better than the colour we saw in the 1800s. The colour is a lot more refined and less patchy. You know, at a first glance, this looks like a real colour film. And the narrative, the fact that it even attempted to tell a narrative, and the fact that it somewhat did, is an impressive thing in its own right. But yeah, overall, if you know the story of Joan of Arc, watch this. If you don't, look it up, then watch this. Next up at number 6, we have La Sirène, or if you're not French, which I am not, so that would be The Mermaid. Another Méliès. I really enjoy this one because it really feels like Méliès just standing in front of a camera having a blast. He's basically walking around as a character and doing all these sort of magic tricks, just experimenting with the use of jump cuts. He's basically just he's just like me right now. He's sat in front of a camera and he's just sort of testing things out. Let's give it a shot now. So let's say I got this hat, and then I tip it, and all those shoes come out. I mean, that was a bad example, but you get the gist. Like, I don't know if this is true or not, but I'm going off just educated guess. I believe that is his wife, who is the mermaid. Maybe I should look that up. Alright, I have no idea. It probably wasn't if it doesn't say anything about it, but I thought it was. Maybe it is. I don't know. A lot of passion and energy and just love in this film. I think it's very charming. And the effects are really seamless, you know? Yeah, I especially love at the very end, the mermaid sort of... She's in this sort of, like, mermaid position, like, sideways on, and then it sort of fades. Next up we have the very first heist movie, The Great Train Robbery, which I think succeeds on multiple levels. Firstly, I'd like to point out the way that it chops up using a set and location footage at the same time. So what I mean is, at the very beginning, for example, they're inside this train station place. You know, it's a set, and then you can see through the window there's like a projection. And then later on, they'll actually be outside on a train, and there'll be real people and stuff. You know, when you look at the Méliès stuff, like I mentioned, it's all set-based pretty much. You know, it's either you're documenting real life or you're making a fiction film. And this is the first one that I think sort of merged the two to tell a story. And not only that, this was a huge pioneering film in narrative. I can actually follow this. I no longer have that problem where I'm sort of watching blobs on screen trying to discern who's who. In this film, there's a very core, central key characters. They have big hats and moustaches to help you figure out who's who. In terms of very early cinema, this is a very good story movie. And so I recommend it for that, you know, for its historical significance and the fact that you can actually follow it without being like, what the fuck am I watching? I can't see. It's all staticky and I can't figure out what's happening. Next up is the one-man band, which I just love this one. It's so cool. Again, like the Mermaid, what I said about just him standing on the camera and having some energy. It's sort of like that, except I think this one's a step up. The idea of just the one-man band and the music and stuff, it's really cool. I'm going to make a one-man band right now real quick. So I'm the one-man band. I'm playing my strings. You keep on going, mate. You keep on going. I'm going to start going on the piano. That's enough prancing about and having fun. It's time to go to the darker, scarier horror angle. We're going to Bluebeard, the French classic. Basically, it's about a king, and he kills all these wives to make money, basically. There's definitely some sort of old fucking mythological, like, reason for the story. I really don't know what it is. This is the first film out of the ones that we've looked at so far where I've sort of been like, oh wow, that shot's chilling, or like haunting. You know, I'm actually been kind of like, oh, this is like, you know, a bit, So, again, like normal, Méliès sets are fucking nuts. They look fucking gorgeous. The art direction is like straight out of a Victorian kids book. And yeah, that's that sort of moment when the wife, she ignores Bluebeard, walks into this room she's not supposed to go into, and then it's dark, opens up the window, and suddenly there's just all these bodies hanging, and it's a very fucking impactful shot. The story isn't really the main factor for me. It is a good little kid's story, I'm sure, but that's not really what it is for me. Just the way that it uses these things, like the cool sets, the cool effects, you know, all these things that we've seen Méliès sort of dabble with. The fact that it uses all these, and I think it's implemented into a story that, you know, can turn these elements into a horror thing. You know, you're not just doing these cool effects just to be like, oh look, bands jump cutting around. There's two people. This is actually in the vein of creating horror, and I think that's a landmark achievement, really. Second to last, we have another George Méliès actually. A Trip to the Moon. This one is very famous. Back in 1902, people didn't know what the moon was, you know. They didn't know what it looked like up there. So this is very much a Victorian interpretation of the moon. I think this one really pushes George Méliès' art style to its max. It's so colourful, vibrant, really imaginative and creative. And it's just so iconic, the moon having a face and stuff. It's very fun. It is kind of just blobs moving around, but it's an expedition to the moon. You don't really need to care. It's about what's on the moon. So this narrative works really well. It's not confusing. This is something anyone can watch. So yeah. At number 1, we have this dark, creepy, gothic horror, The Mistletoe Bough. I think this is a very underrated film. And there is a 2-minute BO5 cut. I would highly recommend the 8-minute version, because that is just the better and original version. This film is just absolutely gorgeous. It has a real sort of gothic look to it. And again, like The Great Train Robbery, it's one that crosses between sets and on-location filming. And I think it works really nicely. The whole story of this is basically, it's a family playing hide and seek. This woman, she hides in a box and she gets locked in. And for years, the family and the husband and what have you, all these characters, they have no idea what's happened to her. And then the sort of very ending shot, and I'm sorry to spoil it if you're going to watch it, but this is my fucking show, so watch it or get out. They open the box and you don't see the inside, but you just sort of have that reaction, and it's very eerie. I think this is a great little short. It's based off a poem, I think, so it's very simple. The strongest part of this for me is the source material, the original story, just this woman in a box. She has to live out the rest of her life there, starve to death, die. It's kind of horrible, and that's why I think it's so good that they didn't actually put something in the box. It would just ruin that sense of imagination. So that's the standout element. But aside from that, the way the film works just complements that story so well. The ghost effect at the end, very well done. But yeah, that is my top 10 films from the years 1900 to 1905. Looking forward to doing 1905 to 1910. Thank you for watching.